I'll start with the question that I ask everybody, Mandy. Okay. And it is a question that speaks to everybody differently. And it's about what you yourself right now, today, when you wake up in the morning and your week gets started or your weekend or whatever, what speaks to your heart? What makes your heart sing out loud every single day that you get up?
Now, do you mean like my mission, or what is it like I want to do like for self-care when I first wake up? Like what kind of
That's a good question. You can go either way with it. Like, for example, for me right now, every day right now, really, my kids are really little. So like just having any time throughout the day to spend with them and to be able to like get down on my knees and play with them and all that really just makes, my heart sing, and it makes my heart filled with joy, and everything else, ripples off of that. So that's kind
Sure.
of, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I do just have one question for you.
Yeah.
Your audience, are they more so entrepreneurs, people who have 9-to-5s? Because I can kind of speak like differently depending on that. So I was just curious. I wanted to make sure like I'm really speaking to the person who's listening most.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just had a call with somebody about this because my number one issue right now is I'm so broad. So
Okay, yeah.
they were telling me I needed to be more specific with my intention on my podcast episodes. And how I promote it. So that's actually a really good, it's so funny. No one's ever asked me that yet. They just kind of go into their stuff. Except for like, I think one other person in the beginning. And so I am figuring out now where I want to dial my attention. And it literally probably like 3 hours before we got on this phone, I had that call before we got on this podcast. And I want to direct it more towards just families in general, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever. I want to direct it though towards the more of the family people. So there might be high income earners, medium income earners, but they're just family,
Perfect. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what makes you go in the morning? What touches your heart every day?
So for me, it's actually just having like quiet time to myself, because previously my life just used to seem to be really crazy and I was just go, 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 lots of noise. So for me, just having like some quiet time in the morning feels like a little piece of heaven.
I like that. And what time usually you get up?
It really varies, but typically around 7-ish.
Around 7. Do you have, I have to ask this because this is the huge trend right now, right? Do you have some sort of a morning routine established when you get up?
Yeah, so for me, I love like jumping on my mini trampoline. Right now it's going into winter, so I'm jumping on it inside. In the summertime, I jump outside on my trampoline, and then I start my workout first thing, and then I kind of go into the rest of my day from there. But I just found I have to have my workout first thing in the morning because it just like energizes me. I feel really, really good, and that's how I kick off my morning.
Yeah, and probably like me, I say if I don't do it in the morning, I'll be like, I'll get it in at like noon, and then the day comes and you just never end up getting it in most of the time, right?
Absolutely.
What is this jump? I'm curious. What's this jumping on the trampoline stuff?
Yeah, so it's like a little mini trampoline. They call it a rebounder. And I jump on it for 7 minutes, and it really just gets like, because I sit all day long for the most part, but it gets like your lymphatic system flowing. And it's really good because our lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like other systems in our body. So it relies on just your muscles. So it's really helping to get stuff that's like back, like it's near your feet and different things like back up so it can flush it out of your lymph system. And we don't do a lot of jumping motions. So I love jumping on there. I put on music I really, really like. And I just feel really, really good kind of like shaking up my body when I first start the day. Because even my workout, I'm not doing jumping in my workout. So I love kind of doing that and then doing my workout right after that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It reminds me of, I really enjoy getting in like 20 or 50 jumping jacks in the morning to like, and I didn't know that it was for my lymphatic system. But yeah, that makes total sense. And I like that. Now this is the Mindful Impact podcast. So, and we talk a lot about meditation on a lot of episodes. Me personally, I've a little background, daily meditator for almost a year now. It's coming up very soon. And it's changed my life completely. So I do ask every guest, I just want to know, what is your meditation practice look like right now?
Yeah, so for me, I do short meditations, so about 15 minutes. And I typically either do a meditation or a hypnosis, and I kind of go back and forth depending on which one it is that I like the most. And I like guided meditations, and then sometimes I'll challenge myself to just have meditation time where there's nothing and it's just in silence. But for a really long time, that was uncomfortable for me. And I just found I had too many thoughts. So I would do guided ones, really, really like that. But I've been challenging myself by incorporating some more kind of quiet ones where it's just like me allowing whatever comes in and just really working on like my mind control there.
Yeah. I like that you talked about you're shifting to like more quiet ones, because I'm kind of going through that now. So I totally understand. What is like, well, first off, how long have you been, I want to ask you about this
Hypnosis.
hypnosis. Yeah. I've never talked about that before. So it's totally new to me. But before that, how long have you been in this process for? How many?
So it would be coming up on 5 years now.
Wow.
So
Nice.
for me, it's funny, actually, I feel like meditation is where people mostly start. And I actually did it kind of backwards. I had never meditated before. And I actually went to someone in person for some help with some hypnosis. And I went in being a total skeptic and going, you know what, this is probably never, ever going to work. And so that was my attitude when I went in, and it was so incredible. Like, I'm not a person who relaxed super easy at that time in my life, very high stress. And it was the most relaxing thing for me. It was almost a high, like it was very addicting because I've never been so calm. So I started with hypnosis first, actually. And then after that, I started doing meditation. So I kind of do both of them just depending on what it is. Like for me, I find hypnosis, I can get into like a deeper state of calmness.
Wow.
And for meditation, if I just want something that's a little bit more restful or something a little bit more specific in certain ways, then I'll do my meditation. But either way, I will do each of them every single day. For me, it's just, I truly do need it. My brain can become overwhelmed really quickly. So I just use it for so many reasons, but it calms me down so much. So typically my meditations are about 15 minutes. And then my hypnosises will be, the shortest would be 15 to about 20, 25 minutes long.
And you put yourself in these hypnosis, or is it like?
Yeah. So for me, I don't know how easy it would have been for me to do it if so I have like hypnosis tracks that I use.
Yeah.
But I did do 5 sessions with someone in person first. So I did have the idea of it. Like I never knew that I would use hypnosis audios. I went in person. It was so life-changing and incredible for me. So then I started using, like, I don't live in a city where it's close to going to someone. My city days are really packed. So I want something I can do every single day at home. So I have hypnosis is for like literally all different walks of life. And depending on what I need, if I need like an energy booster, I'll kind of use that one. I have money mindset ones. But I'm literally in love with hypnosis and meditation.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I'd love to like keep talking about the hypnosis stuff, but I do want to get into your true expertise, which right on your tagline on your site says, I help individuals and couples gain clarity and improve their financial situation and end their money anxiety. Right? That's awesome. I don't know how long that took you to put together, but that was like, boom, that was good. I think a good tagline on your site is so important to give people clarity instantly about what you do and what your expertise is, right? And you have like, so my audience knows you have, I mean, on our website, where was it? About me. Here we go. I was telling her before we actually pressed record here, she has a certification for like everything. I don't mean to like blow you up here, but just so people know, like Mandy puts in a lot of extra time for and practice for herself, not only to improve herself, but also her clients too. So she's a meditation teacher, certified life and success coach, financial coach, academy graduate. I mean, the list goes on. You can check it out in her bio. But I'm really excited to talk to her because, admittedly, Mandy, some background about me. I've worked on a lot of things over the past couple of years. And one thing I'm just still really, really crappy at. And you know what? I just got to stop saying that, because number one, it starts with not saying you're bad at it, right?
Absolutely.
Is no matter how much money I make, I seem to find ways to put it in different avenues and then say, where did it go? So I'm interested to talk to you about this. And one of the things that it says on your site, there was like a list. I signed up for your email, and I got a list of things. And the number one thing that stuck out to me is, where was it here? It says, practice gaining control over your emotions so you can make smart and conscious decisions based around your finances. Can we start there?
Absolutely. So the reason that I mentioned that is because we are super emotional beings, but then even more so when it comes to our money. So I talk a lot about really getting your emotions in check, because it has a huge effect on how it is we decide to use our money, where we allocate it. And I always tell my clients, before money comes in, let's decide where it goes, because when it comes in, we are at a heightened state. We're really, really excited. We're optimistic. And a lot of times that money can get spent pretty quickly in a way that isn't aligned with like what we truly want or how we truly want to feel in our lives. So especially anyone, if you have any variable income, or if you're an entrepreneur, or if you have just big months where your expenses change or your income changes, it can make it really difficult to really dial that in. And when things are up, that's where all of a sudden money can start flowing out a lot more. So that's where I say, like, get in check with your emotions to make sure that you're not feeling really emotional, whether that's like the scarcity side of things, which is where my personal story, was really fantastic at managing money, but had like a really, really scarce mindset around it. So I personally did not spend very much. It took a lot to get me to spend anything. And then there's also the other end where you can feel really scarce, maybe because of how you've grown up or the experiences you've been through. And instead of you keeping everything, you'll spend it all because you feel like it's going to be taken away or you're going to lose it anyways. So you might as well spend it on things that you really, really want, which then that never helps you to get ahead either. So really just assessing your emotions of like, where am I coming from when I spend this money? What is it I actually really want to experience in my life? Like, how do I want to feel? Because if I want to feel financially safe and financially secure and peace of mind, which is what most of my clients and audience come to me for, but they're spending in a way that doesn't align with that. So that's where digging deeper of like the emotions of like, do you feel like there's a void that you're trying to fill? That happens so often. And a lot of times people don't really notice that. So that's where like diving into like emotionally, like, how do you feel? Yes, I'm a numbers person. I'm great with numbers. But a lot of the work that I do with my clients is a lot of the other stuff that isn't about the numbers. It's like, no, be honest with me. Tell me how you're feeling. Like, what are you going through? Don't censor yourself. Don't censor your emotions. Like, feel whatever you need to feel inside your body that you're probably not feeling. So you can work through that emotion and get to the other side of it. We're humans. We're going to feel emotions, but it's staying in those stuck emotions that I see that really affects our finances the most.
Yeah. And you think it's that you hear a lot about a void and you try to figure out what that person's void is that they're trying to fill. What kind of process, if you don't mind sharing, do you help people go through to find that void?
Yeah. So where we typically start is actually looking at the numbers, because the numbers can tell a really good story where then people will feel more comfortable to elaborate on it, or they might not have that true awareness of really what it is that they're feeling yet. They don't know how to put it into words. And by looking at the numbers, they can say, okay, like a big one for a women especially is food. That is a huge one. And of course that ties right into your finances. And a lot of people don't really talk about that one, is when women, for anyone, but women especially, when we're really, really feeling stressed, food is a really easy thing to turn to give us that dopamine, that feel good hormone to kind of give us that boost. It's been a crappy day, so you reach for something. And then after a while, it starts to really build up where you're eating out more, or your groceries start having a lot of like quick, high carb items. And so your grocery bill's raising, and you're also like, your self-confidence is decreasing at the same time. So when we see like that their eating out is really high, I might say, okay, tell me about that. Let's talk about that. And then that's where all of a sudden they might start talking about like the stress with either their job or their planning. And we can really start to talk through that first. So it's really just seeing, where is your money going to begin with? And then it's a lot easier to say, well, this is the reason that I do this is because of this, or this is what, my thought process is. And then it's easier to start like asking questions from there. But we need to establish first the awareness of, okay, for you personally, like some people, it might be going to Target. One of my clients, that was her huge, like, she's like, I go to Target and I try really hard and I spend so much money there. So for her, that was it. For someone else, it was Amazon. For other people, it's, going for fast food. So it's really figuring out first, where is that money going? And then we can start going from there. Like, why is it that you're choosing that void? Like, what is it deep down inside that a lot of times we actually know what's going on? We're so scared to say it. And a lot of times we haven't even told our partner or the people closest to us. So we're holding it in. And I just hold that space, because personally for me, it was the exact same experience. Was I just didn't feel safe enough to come out and say it, especially if it seems really, really small, like growing up. Unless it was a really big deal, you pretty much shouldn't be talking about it. So a lot of times we feel like if it's something that seems small, but it's honestly eating away at us, we just won't say anything about it.
Yeah. because it just seems like, oh, I can deal with this. It's small. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And then it just keeps eating at us. That's interesting. And you just said, I love all of that. And you just said, communicating with your partner. I actually had that as the next thing on your list here. The two things I wanted to make sure we definitely talked about. Communicating with your partner about your financial situation. When I see that, I think, okay, you talk about things you want to purchase, things that you guys want to do for the home, the vacation you want to go on, and it kind of ends there. Do you like, is it about deep diving into every little dollar, where it goes, why it goes there? Is that what we're talking about here, or what's this about?
So one of the biggest things I see couples not talking about that has a really big effect is asking, like, we all know, like, there's certain things like travel, home, certain things that always kind of just come up in conversation because they're kind of your typical goals. But then there's the other things, the other pieces that make us human that we're not talking about, that might be different. Our goals and dreams and values might be a little bit different from our partners. So sometimes we might not want to bring that up. So talking about different things, like, what is a priority to you? That's something really important, because that's what, when it comes down to couples and fighting about spending and finances, so often we think it's really about the money and we think it's about the budget, and it's really not. It's about your priorities. And sometimes someone feeling like something that's a priority to them isn't a priority to the other person. But a lot of times we haven't actually communicated it in a way for the other person to even understand. So there's like that lack of communication there, where this person feels like the other person's not understanding them, but this person literally has no idea how important it is to this person, and then why. Like, so ask, like, what is so important to you, like, and what's important to you financially, like, what resources, when you sit down and you do look at your numbers, ask, like, okay, so what are your priorities, and do we have resources going towards that? How can we change that to make it so you feel like financially we're putting money towards something that's important to you? And then vice versa. So it's not nitpicking as this person spent this or this, but really just first, just understanding what's important to the other person. And then something else that's really important to ask is, like, ask that person how money was talked about in their household. Like, ask how their mom handled money and how their dad handled it. Because so often our money story is very different than what our partner experienced. Like, there's going to be some commonality, but there's going to be some differences. And when we understand how people came from differences, it's so much easier then to communicate and to see things from, a lot of times when something comes up, the first thing we do is get defensive. And then what we're doing is we're sitting and we are thinking about the next thing that we're going to say. So we're really not actively listening and understanding that person. We're just waiting to defend the next point. So when you find out why that person's coming from there, like, maybe this is what happened with their mom and their dad growing up financially. Like, a big thing I see is when two people are together and maybe one person, their parents had a really great relationship, and this isn't even talking about money, and then the other person, their parents are divorced. There's going to be some definite different feelings there because of what those two people experience, because the financial situations would have been seen differently as well. So really just figuring out what is your priorities first, you as a person, and then asking your partner what is really important to them. And then seeing, like, okay, do we have financial resources going to both of those priorities? How can we change that? And then ask, okay, figuring out what your money story is and what theirs is. And then also remember, at the end of the day, you two are trying to be a team, and it's really about just love and understanding that person. It's never about someone winning. It's just about being able to, you want to be heard, but they also want to be heard at the same time. And just remembering that you're on the same team, because sometimes we just throw off that defense, and that really is not, you wouldn't do that to a team member. So you really need to remember you're on the same team. You guys just need to communicate a little bit more and to know it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. So sitting in that little bit of discomfort is so important to actually have those conversations, because what I see is just that a lot of them just aren't happening because people are afraid of the discomfort. And I understand that, but I encourage you to know it is going to feel uncomfortable, but it's also going to be worth it, not just for your finances, but for your relationship and your quality of life together.
Yeah, that was really good. One of the moments that made me smile there is when you said that, remember that you're a team. And that goes for any conversation that you're having or any argument or disagreement. And, like, especially finances, you're not there to win. You're not there to be right. And I'd imagine that when one person is the one that's the breadwinner, or extreme breadwinner and the other person isn't making anything or very little, those conversations are probably a little bit different than ones where they're equally making very similar money, right? Is that what you find? So you have to work around that kind of thing too, and talk about that. And maybe it's so interesting you say that, because my mind starts going like, okay, now that you say that, like my wife is going to come from a completely different viewpoint as a stay-at-home mom than I am as the bread owner winner. I hate to use that word, breadwinner, or the main earner in the relationship. So you have to speak to each other as a team and figure those things out. And I also I want to repeat what you said about actually having that conversation, because I can see where where a husband and wife or significant other that share money together in a household, they might say, let's have a conversation. They go, oh, well, this week's really busy. Let's do it next week. Or, we just have so much on our plate right now. This conversation isn't going to be good right now. Let's do it. And then it just keeps getting pushed off because it's really, like you said, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I'm really glad you brought that up. So you just basically have to just have it. Like grab whoever wants to have it more, grab the person, sit them down, right? And be like, all right, we're not moving until we talk about this kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So I want to give a couple of tips on that. So that's where I say have money dates. So make it a priority. I would say at minimum once a month. You could do it twice a month, but make it a priority where, so if you have kids, the kids need to not be in on this conversation. They need to be somewhere, whether it's a babysitter that you pay for literally 30 minutes, make it somewhere that's comfortable. If you feel like things might get a little bit heated, you could literally go to a coffee shop, because you're going to contain yourselves a little bit more as you go through it. And the other thing is, set a time limit is really important, because the one person who typically what I find is one person wants to have the conversation and the other person a lot of times does not really want to have the conversation. So if you set a time limit, at first you can say 30 minutes. You're not going to make this a 2-hour thing, because you want this person to feel really good in this conversation. Have points that you want to go over, and first celebrate your wins of what went right, even if it's not even financially, but what for your week went right. What do you want to compliment that other person on? Make them feel really, really good about it, so they want to keep having these conversations. And then you can dive into other things that you can do better, and make sure it's really great to have an agenda. But at the same time, just be really open to allow it to flow. But having a time limit is really, really good. And treat it as a money date. Make it feel really, really good. Don't make it feel like it's something super uncomfortable. So if you do want to go to the coffee shop and you guys want to get a really nice coffee or whatever that looks like, and just make it feel good, just allow that as that sacred space to just start just opening up. And it can just be little things. I've got clients that they tell me everything, but they're not quite comfortable telling their partner everything. So we're working towards they just keep opening up more and more to their partner. So you can start the conversation small and just see okay, if you want to set just one goal for the next 2 weeks, what is that goal? Make it something achievable and something small versus we need to pay off our credit card. Well, that could be a pretty dang big goal. Let's break it down really small and make it feel really achievable and good, so you can build upon that, so your money dates can get a lot better from there. And just know just 30 minutes once a month, start with that and have it as quiet time. And this is time blocked out that it's you going to the doctor. This is how important this conversation is to have. You're not canceling on your doctor. You're not canceling on this. So that's something really important to keep in mind.
Why is it so important?
It's so important because I see the conversations not happening. And a lot of times we think if we just set something aside, that, everything's fine. What I see happening is, especially typically one person, anxiety is building up, stress is building up, also resentment can be building up. And then from there, it really affects your relationship. So it's so important to have these conversations sooner than later, because I can guarantee you it will come back and it will bite you. And it will be much, much worse, because what I see sometimes is one person isn't very stressed and they're everything's good. No, it's fine. The other person, which may be the person earning the money, it may be just the person managing the finances. But one person I often see is typically a lot more stressed, and they're feeling not heard. They are feeling like the other person just will not communicate about this area. And then after a while, resentment does starting to build up for them. The other thing when it comes to couples where it's someone who maybe earns a lot more than the other one, because I do see that happen quite often. There can be resentment on both sides. The person who's earning more that maybe isn't home as much, and they wish that they could be home, but they're really trying to like keep earning all the money for the family. And then the other person is upset at them maybe because they're gone so much. And so not communicating back and forth that you actually both want the same thing. I do want to be home more, but I also want to provide, and vice versa, gets you to just understand the other person more and have more compassion. So these conversations are really important because eventually it will come one way or the other, and it won't, I hate saying divorce, but so often I see that things for one person, just, you bottle it up so much that you just feel like one day one person wakes up, they can't take it anymore, and they've tried to have the conversations, and the other person just simply didn't realize how serious that other person was. And now it's almost too late to go back. Like there's too much damage has been done. So that's where I'm saying, like, yes, it's uncomfortable. But my favorite quote is, the quality of your life can be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. That's by Tim Ferris. Yeah. I love it. And I think that that just really hits home for me, because we don't like doing things that are uncomfortable, especially these kinds of conversations. But this is why they're so important, because we don't have them. It doesn't lead to either us or our partner. It doesn't lead to either of your lives becoming better whatsoever. So have these conversations so your life can really keep growing together especially, versus you two growing apart.
You said divorce, and I was going to say, it's from this conversation, it sounds like you saved a lot of marriages or engagements, right?
Absolutely, because people just don't, the other thing, no one tells us the types of conversations we should have before we even get engaged. Like, it's kind of like when you're dating someone, you don't really understand like how much about money that you should be talking about. And so I see the back end a lot of times, and just what I see is a lot of couples who, and you don't have to combine your finances with your partner. It's whatever works best for both of you. But what I just see is there's such little transparency and so few conversations that ever happen about money. And then people get married or they start their family, and then it's almost feels harder to have those conversations. So have small conversations frequently and just keep building from there. But it is so important, because what I see is just one person's way more stressed, one person isn't quite as much, one person knows that it's building up but is uncomfortable about having that conversation, and then one day they wake up, it's so hard to go back and to really fix all of that. So that's why it's so important, just because literally money is the number one cause of divorce. And I completely understand, because I see and I hear from a lot of people on both ends of this spectrum. So I'm saying it to help prevent by having these conversations.
And would you say, I want people to hear this, I think, because I think I know what you're going to say, but we'll see. Would you say that like even the wealthy, like higher end of the spectrum earners, like, I don't know, even 7-figure, you could say, earners have totally different, they have money problems just like a family earning 70, 80 grand together or 50 grand together. Is that true?
100%. And that's a big thing that a lot of people think is I just need to earn more money. Earning more money is absolutely great, and I would never tell anyone not to. It's amazing to increase your income. But don't think that just earning more money solves the problem, because I've worked with people when I was a power engineer and I saved over $200,000 by 26. I've had colleagues that made the same money as I did and were literally struggling paycheck to paycheck, that made the exact same amount of money as me. And it was because of their choices that they had made. And that definitely caused a lot more issues for them. I see people who have businesses that are the 7-figure mark, and they still need to really work on their communication around money. So just simply increasing your income does not solve the problem, because there's really two ends of the spectrum. There's bringing money in. That's the first step that we really need to focus on. But what people don't talk about much is like how much you're keeping, how you're managing that. That is what really is starting to address like the peace of mind, the feelings of like safety and security. And that's a really big one for women, is the feeling of feeling safe and secure. And they feel that like financially, but it also affects just how they feel like safe and secure in your everyday life. Depending on how you grew up, if you didn't have a lot, you will feel that for the rest of your life. You will really, if you don't work on improving your finances, that is a huge thing that can really just make you feel like, I actually don't feel that safe and secure. And my partner doesn't even realize that. So it's first like having that awareness there of like, money doesn't solve the problem by just earning more. It's like, okay, now that we have great income coming in, we also have to, on the back end, make sure we're keeping more. And I'm not sure who it was that did the study, but there was a study done and it said, once you earn $70,000 a year, any more money that you earn above that actually doesn't increase your happiness. So that's kind of where that threshold is. Money does a lot for you. Absolutely. I'm not going to discount that, but you have to make sure that you're managing it on the other end to really get the biggest rewards, which is how you want to feel. Like, you want to feel safe, you want to feel secure, you don't want to feel stressed every day. So it's really like that, managing it on the back end, which is where couples really need to make sure that they're just having conversations regularly, even just small.
Yeah, that's good. And then, so to talk like the monthly meetings, setting a certain amount of time to have those, being open about how you feel, asking how they feel, remembering that we're all a team together. This is all mindful money management. And I love it. What about, no matter what your level of income, do you always recommend a family sticking to a budget?
So I definitely recommend having a system in place that works for you. So there's different things, like depending on your income, there's certain things that people who make more money, it's easier to kind of dial their money in this way. But what I recommend is definitely having, like, what I do with my clients is I don't do budgeting, but I do cash flow management is what I call it. Because to me, budgeting is like, so this is December that we're recording this. So a budget is like looking at December, the income and expenses, but not really looking going forward. And what I want my clients to do is, we're deciding things that are happening. We're looking forward 3 months from now, 6 months from now. And there's so much transparency there. And a lot of times I have where typically it's a woman that comes to me about the finances and she's working on it with me at first. And then later on, the partner jumps on board, because like the transparency needs to be so easy. Like, both people need to know how much money is in the account at all times. Both people need to know when expenses are going out and when income is coming in. And then also, once you start to see like this month and the next couple months coming up, then you can start to, like, those things that I said, going back to your priorities, maybe we can't make that happen like this very month, but we can see like in 3 months from now, we can really allocate more money towards that. And that makes that other person excited to feel like what's really important to them is finally like going to start coming to fruition. So I really do think for families, it is so important, because especially with families, there are more variables, there are more little costs, and then also big costs that come up. So if you have that transparency, it just eases the stress level for both. The other thing is, let's say, for example, maybe one person stays home and takes care of the kids and then also takes care of the finances, and the other person works away, goes out of the home and works, or brings in most of the income. Sometimes what I see is the person who's staying home with the kids, maybe they're the ones that are constantly like buying the stuff for their kids because they're the ones with the kids the most often, but the other person doesn't quite realize how much that adds up. Well, when you have a system that shows like this is really what it costs, what I see happen is it starts to get both people more on the same page, because sometimes people can feel like something's just coming across as nagging or a little bit of an exaggeration, or no, everything's just fine. But when you see the numbers there, it's a lot easier for the other person to see it and go, oh, okay, I just didn't realize once everything was added up that this is what it looked like. So there's the communication aspect of us physically talking, but then there's also like the transparency in the actual numbers that's super important, that actually can make the communication easier. So yes, I do recommend some kind of budget or cash flow system for sure.
And is there an app or something that you can that you recommend to help people manage that, see where their money's going in and out?
So I did used to use a software that's free. The reason I do not use that anymore is because I found it's very like reactionary. It's more bookkeeping. A lot of softwares out there are what has already happened, or this month. It's not next month and 3 months from now when a big expense is coming in, and how are we going to deal with it when that month happens. So personally, I use spreadsheets for all my clients. I use spreadsheets just because we can look at this month and then the months coming up. What I would say is, if you're not at the level yet to use spreadsheets, what you can do is there's mint.com. It's free. It will sync up to your bank account. Now, to me, it is more of a reactionary system, but what you can learn from it is the awareness of where has the money been going, because as soon as you log in, you can get about 90 days worth of transaction history. So you can start to see, like one of the families I worked with, they didn't realize they were spending $900 eating out. And they're like, oh my gosh, that can be our groceries and it can be one of our vehicle payments. So that's pretty huge there. So that can help you with the awareness of just where the money's been going. And then, like I said, I just like spreadsheets to see this month, next month. And honestly, we start to plan the whole year out. There's going to be things that come up.
Yeah.
I do want to just address one thing that a lot of people, when it comes to budgeting, just don't even realize because not enough people talk about it. And there's 3 different types of expenses. One is our fixed expenses. We're really good at budgeting for those. The second one is day-to-day expenses. So groceries, gas, eating out. And then the third one is the non-recurring and random expenses. So this is the one that no matter how much money you make or how good you are with money, it really throws people off. So this is any expense that isn't a monthly expense. It might be twice a year, it might be once a year. So it's Christmas right now. Christmas is one of those types of things. So gifts, and a lot of times when we think about gifts, we just think about Christmas, but there's birthdays throughout the year. There's a whole bunch of other things that come up. So I personally, what we do is I go through with my clients all these expenses that they might not have this month, but are going to be coming up over the next 12 months. So travel, we already take that into account. And what we do is we figure out what all those types of categories are. So travel, maybe if they pay their vehicle insurance just once a year, maybe if their property taxes are just once a year, gifts, clothing is another one. So I actually have them open up a separate savings account for each of those types of expenses. And then we figure out, okay, let's say travel is going to be $2,000 for the year. We divide it by 12 and we figure out what we actually need to be saving this very month, put it in that account. So when those expenses come up, it's not throwing it on the credit card, because that is typically what happens. It's you're literally cash flowing it because you already have it saved. And the reason I say separate savings accounts is because everyone has one savings account, and you're saving for like 5 different things in there. So there's no transparency about how close you are to each of those goals. And then the other thing is the emotional side of it. When you dip into that savings account to pay for an expense, you feel really crappy about it. And there's like that shame and guilt of dipping into your savings account. But when you have Christmas coming up every year, you know you're going to be buying gifts. Yeah. If you're going to travel somewhere once a year, you know that's going to happen. So when you dip into these accounts to pay for it, you now no longer have that shame and guilt, because that was the entire point of that account. And then your savings account is what is actually, you want it to grow until it's whatever special goal it is. But that's a big piece that a lot of budgeting softwares do not take into account, is right now you actually need to be saving for these upcoming things. So that's a big thing that I help my clients with. And just having that awareness of like, oh my gosh, we do need to be saving for those things right now is so important.
Yeah. Wow. It's a delight to talk to you. You're a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Where is your accent from, by the way? Side note.
I'm Canadian. You're from Canadian. Saskatchewan.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And you still live in Canada?
I do. I work with clients in Canada, the States, and then actually work with clients in 5 countries currently.
Oh, wow. Nice. Now I'm going to throw this for a little loop here. When you first started, do you remember when you first started helping people manage money and doing what you do? Was there, because I do have some people that have reached out to me from the podcast and talk about like a transition between what they do now and what they want to do. And you obviously made that shift. Do you remember like what it was like? Was there scarceness? Was there anxiety when you made that shift and you put yourself out there to say, hey, I can help with this, and here's who I am. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So for me, when I was at my job, so I was a power engineer in my previous career, and I did shift work, and I started to get really, really sick because I had that scarcity mindset and I wasn't talking about it. But I also was working shift work, so half my shifts were nights. And just the way it was set up, I was not getting enough sleep and rest whatsoever. So my doctor told me about 2 years before I left my job, I'd have to do something else. And I was completely heartbroken because I didn't know what it would be. And so what I started doing was I just started saving money from then. I started saving it. So then when it came up, I knew what I wanted to do. I would just be able to leave at that point. So I finally realized I wanted to help people actually heal the health problems that they're going through. So I went back to school for holistic nutrition, and I thought that I wanted to help people with that. And while I was away at school, I realized like the body-mind connection, because I was a very kind of left-sided, really sciencey, kind of fact-based type of person, not very spiritual. And while I was away at school, I realized like the connection of the mind-body. And that's where I went, okay, all of the health problems I went through were because I was stressed out about money. Even though I had saved $200,000, I was still so stressed. So that's where I went, okay, I actually need to help people with their finances because it's something very stressful, and I can help all the other areas of their life because I made a complete 180 of my health. So for me, there was definitely like the fear of leaving my job, absolutely. But I just knew so much that I had been through a lot, that they were what I used to call struggles, and what I was used to be really upset about the things that I've been through. They were 100% gifts because I could speak to people from a completely different perspective instead of just debt and saving money and numbers.
Yeah.
I could talk to them about emotionally, mentally, physically, how you're affected by the stress of money. And then from there, okay, how to actually fix it and how to really improve it. So there was definitely the fear of change, but I just kept trusting that like I had been through everything for an absolute reason. There was lots of ups and downs along the road, but I just had to keep remembering to myself, like, you were given this is a gift, and you need to help people in this way. And something that just helped me a lot was the journaling, is the meditation, is the hypnosis. So when those moments come up of doubt, of scarcity, of worries, of just a lot of stress, it makes it easier to get through them. And then just another huge thing is gratitude. When I'm having a really bad day, I need to just go back to all the things I'm grateful for. I'm not worried about if I have anything to eat now. That was at a few different points in my life something that I was really worried about. I don't have to worry, I have a house here. So that's just a big thing, is like anchoring back into so much gratitude of like, honestly, my worst day is someone else's dream best day. And sometimes we need to really use that perspective.
Yeah.
We are going to have tough days, but just keep pushing through. Every day is not going to be amazing, but just keep showing up and being really consistent, and you're going to get the results that you want.
Wow, Mandy, beautiful. you can tell you've been coaching people for a while, and I really seriously grateful for what you do, because it's definitely an important topic. I haven't had anybody on that has talked about money like this before, so I really appreciate it. There's two things I want to finish this with. Number one, I want to ask if you could give a tip. So let's say somebody has $2,000 in credit card debt, because I think that seems to be a common number, common area. What can they do to start the process of just getting rid of that, to lift their anxiety and stuff?
Yeah, so tangibly, the first thing I would say is call up your credit card company and negotiate a lower interest rate, because you're probably paying 19.99% or higher. Just call, be really, really kind to them and say, you know what, I want to negotiate my interest rate because I'm working on a plan to pay it off. If someone says no, call back another time. I've had so many of my clients save hundreds of dollars just from negotiating the interest rate. The next thing I would say is when you make your next credit card payments, make credit card payments the day that you have been paid or the day after, because what we do a lot of times is wait until the end of our pay period to see what's left over that we can throw at it. So it's really important if you intentionally, before that money is really spent, put extra towards it. Now, let's just say if this is just one, let's say you have more than one credit card, make the minimum on all of your credit card payments and then put the extra only towards one. Because what happens is, let's say you have 3 credit cards and you're putting equal amounts to all of them. You're really only getting at the interest, and you need to get at the principal to pay it off. So pay all the minimums and then put extra just towards one card. And what I would say is go through your credit card statement, go through your bank statement and see where is it you can save money. Even the smallest of things, like I have clients that when they very first started with me, I have an intake form, a spreadsheet that they go through before we meet, so I know exactly where they're at. And before they've even sent anything to me, they go, wow, going through that spreadsheet, I just realized I had $170 a month in subscriptions that I did not need, or I was paying $30 in bank fees. Like, a lot of times we think it has to be this huge amount. Look for all the little things that can add up. Cancel those things, but then right away set up like a payment to go to your credit card for those amounts. So instead of it being like reabsorbed into your spending, you're going to go, okay, like even if it's $35, okay, set up an automatic payment right after you've been paid for $35 more to go towards paying off your debt. And then the biggest thing, tighten up your groceries and eating out. That's the number one expense that every single client I see. So what I recommend to do for that is to use cash. It works super well. And what I would say is right after you've been paid, take out cash for a 2-week period, and that's how much cash you're going to use for the next 2 weeks. I don't like clients taking out cash for a month because I find they don't spend it as well. But if they do it for 2 weeks, you are able to really tighten up a hard to tighten up category, because as you see that money coming down, you start to be a little bit more conscious about like your eating out, your meal planning. So that's where you can start to save, like that might even be $400 a month between subscriptions, bank fees, and your groceries that can be extra towards debt without you really having to downgrade your lifestyle.
Beautiful. Those are good tips. Rewind, write down. That was good stuff, Manny. Appreciate it. And so what I took from that is just like little amounts can add up, like expenses. Little amounts can also add up to paying off those things, right?
Absolutely.
So that's good. That's really good stuff. And then once you pay the one card off, you use that money and the extra money to pay the next one, and so on and so forth. That's really good stuff. That's great. Thank you. Now let's ask this final question that I ask everybody that comes on. If you could go back to when you were 18 years old and give yourself some advice, life advice, financial advice, whatever kind of advice you're feeling, what would it be?
I would tell myself to open up a lot more about what I'm feeling and to actually feel the feelings. I've been a person who is always just like, go, 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 don't really feel it, don't get too emotional. And it definitely caught up to me in my life. Like I said, growing up, I'll be super honest, growing up in our household, my mom was a pretty angry person. And so I just didn't ever want to upset the boat. So I just thought unless the house is on fire, it's pretty much not an issue. But then I took that in my life, and things that did bother me, I just didn't say anything. And so a lot would build up, resentment, and that doesn't do anyone any good. So for me, I would just say, like, it's okay to disagree with someone. And that's like how life works. It's okay. Neither person needs to suck it up. You need to just be able to be open and honest in a really kind way and say, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm coming from. But you need to get things off your chest, because if you just kind of pretend things are fine, it will eat away at you. So that's honestly probably one of the biggest things I would tell myself, is it's okay to open up and to have those uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, awesome. And that's because, what was that quote from Tim Ferris about uncertainty and uncomfortableness?
Yeah, the quality of your life can be determined by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have.
There we go. And then that's great. It all turns around to that quote we talked about in the beginning. That's great. Thank you, Mandy, so much. That was awesome. I really, really appreciate it. If there's somewhere that somebody could find you online or social media, where should we look?
Yeah, so you can join me on Instagram at Mandyy Thomas. Mandy's with 2 Y's. And I would love the person listening if you would just send both of us a message about what it was that was your biggest takeaway from this episode.
Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you, Mandy.